From the studios of WVIR-TV, welcome to This Week in Richmond. Virginians have 4 months to decide who will lead the Commonwealth into the 21st century, with both Democrat Don Beyer and Republican Jim Gilmore running hard to claim the state's top political prize. Today, a discussion about the race and other hot political topics with two veteran Capitol correspondents on This Week in Richmond. Good afternoon, and thanks for spending part of your Sunday afternoon with us. I'm Richard Rial, sitting in for Lisa Schaffner, who's on maternity leave. Got 4 more months until Virginia votes for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. The race is heating up almost as hot as the weather here in central Virginia and around the state. With us to talk about those and other issues are two men who follow politics on a daily basis with their respective stations. First, we'd like to welcome Tim Murtaugh, who's the Capitol Bureau Chief for WVIR-TV out of Charlottesville. Live here in Richmond, keep an eye on things.
Pleasure to be here, Richard.
And having fun as usual, I would hope.
Yes, yep. Good summer to be here.
Yes, thanks for being here. Also with us today is Randy Davis, who does the same job for Virginia Capitol Public TV.
There you go, you got it right.
Keep changing your name around, but as usual, Randy, you've been watching this for, what, 30, 40 years now? Or
about 20, something like that.
About 20 years. Well, we'd like to tap your insight. First of all, when we talk about the race between Don Beyer and Jim Gilmore, as Ed Koch likes to say, how am I doing? Let's take them both. How are they doing so far? They're already on the air, they're hitting commercials, and as we say in commercial television, advertise early and often. At least they're doing that so far. And every day. Give us an assessment. What do you think, Jim?
It's hard to say where the two of them stand right now as far as the race is concerned, as who's ahead, because it is so early. As Don Beyer said a few weeks ago to me, no one seems to pay attention to politics until you have to take the first sweater down off the shelf, and we're a ways away from that. They both got off to kind of stumbling starts, I thought. There was the whole, should Jim Gilmore resign as Attorney General to run full-time? There was that whole argument which kept him sidetracked a lot of times. Don Beyer had some very small tax cut proposals, a tax cut on prescription drugs, a total tax cut of about $20 million, and those aren't very easy ideas to sell as something great for the Commonwealth, I don't think.
They're non-sexy.
Yeah, right. They're not hot issues. They're not sexy issues. Gilmore's got a pretty good issue in his personal property tax plan to roll back the first $20,000 worth of a value of a car. On the other hand, that's a very risky position because the Association of Counties, the Virginia Municipal League, all sorts of local government agencies are afraid that it would tie their hands and leave them more at the mercy of the state than they are now. So it's really hard to say. It's kind of been a rocky first few months, I think.
But Randy, certainly quite an issue for Gilmore to seize on, whether it's politically expedient or not, or the opponents and Democrats now say, well, it's easy to say that, but nobody likes the personal property tax. That's like Don Beyer coming out against sexual predators.
Well, but when you look at the political realities of it, just a couple of weeks ago, a special called meeting of legislators to discuss the issue, which may be unprecedented in history to have a political candidate's proposal brought up before a committee to be taken apart, as it were. Dick Cranwell, the House Majority Leader, is one of those who was quoted as saying, well, it's never going to get past my committee. So in reality, even if Gilmore was elected governor, how far would this tax cut proposal go if it has to go through the chairman of the House Finance Committee's panel? And he said the same thing about Don Beyer's proposal to cut the tax on non-prescription drugs. He said he's already warned him that he's going to have a hard time flying through that committee. So
that's assuming Dick Cranwell gets reelected. No.
Oh yes, and we're all watching that race. So
I don't know.
But isn't it death by 1,000 cuts from here on out for Jim Gilmore, because that is going to be the whipping boy issue for the Democrats for at least from here to November? How can Gilmore modify it from here on out and say, well, what I meant was?
I don't know that he has to, because, again, in politics, it's not really the art of the reality, but the art of the perception. And I think an issue like a huge tax cut, something that affects everybody who owns a car or who wants to own a car, may well fly with the voters. What I was saying about the reality may have no impact at all on the election unless the Democrats are able to pound that issue home, to say that it's a nice idea, it just won't work because we just can't afford it.
It also, an issue like that, it kind of makes me think of what happened in the '96 presidential election. There were an awful lot of commercials run by President Clinton and the Democratic Party against Bob Dole with horrible descriptions of what the Republicans were planning to do with welfare, with Medicare. essentially it was
They scared older
it was a
people.
scare tactic, but see that's a very easy message to sell. To sell something that another person's idea is a bad idea is easy to sell. If people want to spread skepticism about Jim Gilmore's tax cut plan, I don't think that's a very difficult argument to make. There are already a lot of people who whether it's true or not, are very vocally critiquing this plan, and I think that's a pretty easy message to sell. And should Jim Gilmore win, as Randy says, getting that tax cut through the General Assembly, dominated of course by Democrats as always, is going to be very difficult. The three of us remember a time 2 years ago when another Republican governor tried to cut taxes only a fraction of the amount that Jim Gilmore's talking about, and the Governor Allen had absolutely no success.
Those obstructionist Democrats
Right?
will have
Yes.
that back again. Politics as usual. What about education as an issue? Certainly, this is an education year. Everybody seems safe with that. I guess they've taken care of parole and crime and building prisons and the things that helped Governor Allen win, and certainly he's lived up to most of his promises in that regard. Education, certainly everybody wants to see better schools. Right now, what's the public view of the two plans that we're seeing out there?
Well, I think as far as you're talking about what goes on inside the classrooms, I don't think there's that much of a perceived problem out there, which is one of the difficulties for the Democrats across the board. They're going to have to prove that things are bad enough that we need a change in the executive mansion and in the other statewide ticket mates. If you're talking about the condition of the physical schools, there's certainly a problem there, and we may be seeing something coming out on that in a proposal to help boost that. But then again, Don Beyer has said, I'm going to be your education governor, and he apparently thinks there's enough fuel there to get voters interested in doing something to help. I think there's been an emphasis on helping people afford college and higher education. But I don't know if there's that much to fix right now with a proposal to make this a hot campaign issue.
4,000 new teachers sounds good from the Gilmore camp, does it not?
Don Beyer spent the last year or so, going back to the last General Assembly session, beyond that, trying to set himself up as the education candidate. Pushing for, I think, $400 million extra dollars in the state budget last year for higher end public education. And he talks about higher pay for the teachers that we have now to retain the best teachers, to attract the best teachers. Jim Gilmore wants to spend a pile of money on education as well. And his plan would be to hire more teachers, 4,000 more teachers, as you mentioned. So it's kind of an approach to the same issue, but from two different sides. One wants higher paid, better teachers. The other one wants more teachers. It'll be difficult for each candidate, I think, to stand really above the other with the education proposals. They're somewhat similar.
Education, I would think, that would be a sustainable issue from here to November.
And it certainly has the support of the General Assembly. I don't think I can remember a time when an education proposal, if it made any sense at all, had problem getting through, because all the legislators want to be on that side of the issue. We're for education. It's a pretty safe issue.
In terms of style, we have a contrast of two different styles, Don Beyer and of Jim Gilmore. They've already put out their initial image ads across the state, and I imagine we'll see more of those. Assess for me what you've seen on television, what you're hearing from people about how those are playing across the Commonwealth.
Jim Gilmore, as you say, a conflict of styles. Jim Gilmore is known as sort of not as gregarious as Don Beyer might be. Don Beyer is a kind of a handshaking, backslapping, hey, how's it going kind of guy. Jim Gilmore is not exactly as
one of his aides says, I wish he'd loosen up a little bit more.
Right. People talk about the charisma gap between the two of them, and there certainly is a difference in the way they behave around other people. The ads, the Jim Gilmore ads, he's used one of them to try and spell out exactly what his personal property tax plan is all about, which is a good idea, because I think he needs to hammer that message, because it certainly will be hammered at by Don Beyer's team. Don Beyer's ads are all very safe. He's against sexual predators, people who prey on children. You know, that's good. That's a pretty safe position, I think. So nothing exciting yet, I don't think, in these ads, but I think probably towards the end of the summer and into September, we'll start to see them mention each other in their ads, and then there will certainly be a flurry of ads run by each candidate that doesn't mention himself, talks only about the other guy. So I think it'll get a little bit nastier in a few months.
Randy, we always talk about this, and every year people are fed up with negative ads, but negative ads work. this is not going to be a different year, is it?
I think the negative ads certainly worked in the nomination campaign for Attorney General. It'll be interesting to see if the race is close enough come October for them to have to pull something out like that. I don't know, probably nobody knows what they could pull out like that, or if there would be a backlash effect. If you have something on somebody else, did it hurt Ken Stolly enough just because he brought out that ad against Gil Davis? Is it worth trying something like that?
It's sometimes people view it as a desperation move as
right,
well.
Right. And I think if there is perceived a need for a negative ad, and the campaign people say that there is, and there's some way it can be slipped in and people can disavow any knowledge of it and say, well, we didn't mean to say that, whether it's on television or through news releases or leaked stories or whatever, I don't think anybody is above using something like that if they think it'll make a real difference.
Well, we'll see how that works out. We're going to go with a couple of positive ads here. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week in Richmond. I'm Richard Riel. We're talking politics 4 months before the election and some of the issues that will come to the fore between now and then, especially in the race for governor between Don Beyer, the Democrat, and Jim Gilmore, the Republican. Gentlemen, with us today, Tim Murtaugh from WVIR-TV from Charlottesville. He's the Richmond Bureau Chief covering Capitol events. Thanks for being here again. And Randy Davis from Virginia Capitol Public TV. That is a mouthful, isn't it? That is a mouthful. One thing we'll hear out of the mouths of a lot of people from here to November is the abortion issue. If we go back 2 elections to the Doug Wilder-Marshall Coleman race, there are those who firmly believe, and there's numbers to back it up, that the abortion issue made a difference in that race, particularly Northern Virginia, suburban women who voted for, helped Doug Wilder win a narrow decision. Abortion maybe not so much to play in the race between George Allen, but certainly there. This year it's going to get a whole different focus, won't it? Because of the Attorney General's race and Mark Earley, who's the Republican candidate, playing it up. How do you see abortion playing out, Randy, from here to there?
I don't think you can avoid it coming up in the campaign. I think that the Democrats have already said that the Republican ticket's view on abortion is to the extreme. And the Republicans countercharging that the Democrats are on the wrong side of the issue. But then again, whether it's going to make a big difference in changing anybody's mind, I think Democrats have already staked out their position and have long held a pro-choice position, and Republicans have held a pro-life position, and I don't think that any voter is going to be surprised one way or the other by somebody being labeled one or the other.
Do you all think there's enough of an undecided vote out there that abortion will make the difference?
It's hard to say. I guess there are a lot of people who
Because it would seem to people have an opinion on abortion.
Sure, everybody has an opinion, and I don't know how many people who vote are one-issue voters, where their litmus test is where does the candidate stand on abortion, no matter what side they're on. The number of undecideds, whether abortion will make the difference, it's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of people who might be swayed by the tax cut issue. There's a lot of people who might be swayed by education. I don't think abortion will play very much in the first 2 levels of the ticket, governor and lieutenant governor. I think, as you mentioned, it is mostly going to be in the race for attorney general, because Mark Earley, who's the Republican, is the author of the parental notification bill, which passed the General Assembly this past session.
And is now being pinged and ponged.
Pinged and ponged, and it won't be long before it'll be in the hands of the Supreme Court, I'm sure. Whoever loses this eventually will take it straight to the Supreme Court. The Democrat on the Attorney General's race, Bill Dolan, has already said a couple of times in appearances, referring to Mark Earley as an extremist on the abortion issue, so it will clearly play out there. In the race for Attorney General, because Mark Earley is such a prominent player in the argument over abortion here in Virginia.
And he's got his true believers behind him
Sure.
in the machine to get out voters.
Obviously, he won the primary over 3 other Republicans in a 4-way race, winning 25% of the vote. That can be considered a pretty sizable victory. How well he would fare in a general election, it's hard to say. People who are identified as very, very conservative candidates may have a tough time in a general election. Mike Farris had a hard time. Oliver North, for a variety of reasons, had a hard time. There was a 3rd candidate in that race.
But of course, in those 2 cases, we're talking about 2 gentlemen that did not have elected experience before.
No record, sure.
No record to go on, and at least in Mark Earley's case, he's got a record that he can point at, and the reason he continues to be elected.
And Bill Dolan has may well be a good candidate, but he was pretty well whipped 4 years ago, the last time around, by Jim Gilmore, who now runs for governor.
Bill Dolan, let's talk about Dolan for a minute here. He's given it a second shot at it here. Does he have a better chance just because of the abortion issue, just because of some other issues, and Early's ties, as some people see it, to such conservative views?
It's always difficult to compare two elections, especially on a statewide ticket, because there's 4 years in between. I think Dolan is probably going to be counting more on his ticket mates to help him, because as Marshall Coleman had become at one time, you get to lose a certain number of elections, and people look at you that way. And so I don't know that he's going to be coming out so much as now I can win because of what I have, but I think perhaps he'll look more to his fellow ticket mates to help him along.
When we look at the rest of the ticket and the two candidates for lieutenant governor, we had L.F. Payne, the Democrat, the former congressman, with us last week, and we'll have all the candidates, we believe, before the election day. But the race between L.F. Payne and John Hager, there is a thought among many people that once Coleman Andrews pulled out, Coleman Andrews, who was expected to be strong, he was from Northern Virginia, he was going to bring money and an organization to that, and when his sudden withdrawal because of family problems comes to light, that hurts Jim Gilmore.
Mm-hmm. It may well. The lieutenant governor's race is probably the third race on the chart. Sure. As far as what people pay attention to. It's interesting to study the contrast between L.F. Payne and the guy at the top of his ticket, Don Beyer, especially with respect to, say, tobacco. Mm-hmm. L.F. Payne is from tobacco country. The 5th district that they used to represent is right in the heart of Virginia tobacco country, and he's always been, to put it this way, I guess, a friend of the industry, mm-hmm. a friend of the Virginia farmer, voting that way in Congress. Don Beyer, at the top of the ticket, has already said that he supports FDA regulation of tobacco and nicotine, and that puts the two top men on the Democratic ticket at odds with each other. Meanwhile, L.F. Payne, who is sort of a pro-tobacco guy, on the other side, the Republican John Hager is a former tobacco executive. So those two guys, in what is a very hot issue all around the country, they agree with each other, while it's unusual, while LF disagrees with the guy at the top of his ticket. It's strange.
John Hager has got to go out there and make some sort of case for himself. He's known well as an organizer and a strategist and treasurer, and once ran for the party chairmanship, was unable to beat Pat McSweeney back then, mostly because of conservatives that are backing Early, and those kinds of people didn't want John Hager as the party chair. But when you look at Hager, what does he have to do to distinguish himself? I mean, L.F. Payne is no glamour boy, but on the other hand, he's been in Congress and he's well known, and he's the only candidate among all 6 that is from west of Richmond.
Not only that, but he is a candidate running from a wheelchair. I think he's the first candidate that I can remember running on a statewide ticket who's handicapped, and I'm very interested to see how that will play out, how, if at all, that will be used in the campaigns, because there are a lot of folks out there who have wanted for a long time to see somebody run from a wheelchair, for example. Does this mean that somebody can actually run for governor, can run for a higher office from that position? Will handicapped people get behind him, people who are behind that cause 100%? And have done a lot of lobbying at the General Assembly for those issues? Will that finally be brought to the forefront? And again, do you use that as an issue, or do you just go with your background? At
the very least, I think it will make people remember who John Hager is, who might not know who he is now. He's well known, as you said, in political circles. Everybody around the state capitol knows exactly who John Hager is and has for a long time, but the population at large has never heard of the guy, really.
Right.
And if people who casually pay attention to politics, they may remember, oh, that's the guy who had polio. And it may, if he doesn't turn it into an issue, it may help him anyway.
And in the state of already getting ready for things at the Capitol, they're looking to see what they have to do. Should John Hager win, they're going to have to build a ramp up for him to preside over the Senate, if that does happen. We'll be right back to talk more about politics right after this. Welcome back to This Week in Richmond. I'm Richard Riel, talking with Tim Murtaugh and Randy Davis about politics and things political. Let's look into our crystal balls, if we will. George Allen now with 4+ months left before he punches out of office. Highly successful by just most everybody's account in terms of what he wanted to set out to do in his political career as governor. Where does he go from here? Certainly a man with a political future, and he may be on a victory tour warming up already for that.
How about the U.S. Senate? That would seem a logical place to replace Chuck Robb if he retires, or if he doesn't retire, if he wants to get back up there on the Hill. I don't think that would be a bad move for him, and I'm sure that's one that he has considered.
Allen 2000, Goals 2000 too.
Could be. Someone told me it is kind of conventional wisdom around the Capitol that the next step would be the United States Senate. But I was in Charlottesville just this week, and somebody who has been close to George Allen since before he was in the General Assembly as a delegate from Charlottesville said that the governor has told him that he has actually considered, and this is by no means an announcement that this is what he's going to do, but has toyed with the idea of just kind of hanging out for 4 years, probably taking a job with a private law firm as a rainmaker, put his name at the top and make millions of dollars for the company, and then perhaps running for governor again. To be, this is, and I thought, is that so? I mean, wouldn't it be better to take the next higher step up? And the guy said, well, the governor loves being the chief executive, and why not do it again? Of course, the Constitution says he can't do it twice in a row,
right.
But if he takes one term off, he could run again, and wouldn't that be?
And of course, there is precedent for that. It's been done before.
It's been done before.
I wonder, though, if it depends on who the next governor will be, whether he would look so favorably on replacing Don Beyer, depending on what Don Beyer could do in 4 years.
And he would run the risk of tarnishing his own image that he has spent 4 years polishing. And if you serve a second term, you won't be compared to anybody but yourself.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that anyone could come out favorably in that comparison as compared to what you did your first time through.
But certainly on many levels, a bright star in a lot of people's minds for the future, not just within the borders of Virginia.
Mm-hmm. You mean like national aspirations?
It's been talked about before.
And we've tried it before.
If there is an awful lot of talk, as you mentioned, about Governor Allen sort of having his sights on the White House, perhaps a few years down the road. If he really is interested in running for president one day, maybe the United States Senate is a bad place for him, because historically, U.S. senators do not fare well when they run for president. However, governors do. Governors do pretty well running. Our current two-term president now is a former governor. Jimmy Carter, a former governor. They do well.
He's been an interesting guy to cover from the very beginning, don't you all agree?
Very interesting.
I mean, he's no Doug Wilder.
No,
and you can take that any way you want.
No, he doesn't have quite the same gift to zing people, I don't think, with sarcastic remarks as Governor Wilder does. But Governor Allen has been interesting to cover, very engaging in a lot of partisan battles, which always makes for interesting television. And nice guy to be around, always affable, jovial. A good guy to cover.
If you agree with him or not, I think you can tell he believes in the issues he's talking about. He doesn't come and read a press release at a news conference. He tells you what he believes from the heart, and that makes some people upset, but others, I think, respect him for it.
Say, if you disagree with him or agree with his ideology, everyone has to agree that he campaigned, these are the list of things that I'm going to do, and he went out and did them. Now, many people may take offense to some of the things that he did, but at least he warned them. He promised them that was what he was going to do.
Well, we'll see next if the two gentlemen that won his job can fulfill that as well, promise as well. We'd like to give our thanks to Tim Murtaugh from WVIR-TV. Good
Glad
to see you again,
here.
Tim. And Randy Davis from Virginia Capitol Public TV.
Very good.
Very good. Thanks, gentlemen, and we will see you on the trail. Okay. If you have a question or a comment for us here at This Week in Richmond, you can give us a call. The number is 804-345-TALK. Or you can send us a fax at 804-330-8883 or email us through webmaster@wric.com. And that's our edition for this week. Join us again next week for another This Week in Richmond. I'm Richard Rial. Have a good week.